Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kelly Green Hour. As we are a week out from the first round of the NFL Draft, 5 days out from the completion of the NFL Draft, and we are here to give our grades and talk about some of the guys the Eagles drafted, and even look at the UDFA's that they signed. I'm your host, LG Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host Connor Donald. Connor, what's going on, man?
Well, as people can tell, this is not my traditional background. I'm away for work, so a nice quiet night in a hotel room and getting to talk the Philadelphia Eagles draft. So I'm pretty excited. And I mean, it feels crazy that the draft's over, but you start looking ahead and it feels like things are just gonna go bang, bang, bang. And next thing we know, it's gonna be the football season again.
Tomorrow, May 1st, the Eagles have the rookies in town, and as they're going to have the rookie minicamp, the schedule comes out in a couple of weeks. Like, you're right. Like, you have camps, you have OTAs, we have a bunch of stuff that's pretty much getting underway as we already hit the month of May. I can't believe it's already May. It's like seems like 2026 has flown by, and we're a third of the way through the year. And like you said, before we know it, we will be in September as the Eagles are set to kick off against whoever. They're going to kick off week one. Before we jump into things, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRL54 and follow the Eagles Pinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts at Eagles Pinpull Network. And if you're joining us live, let us know your thoughts on the Eagles draft in the chat. You guys can give your grades, and at the end of the episode, we will give our grade. So Connor, I mean, the big surprise was the Eagles trading up with Dallas, again, of all teams, 3 spots to draft wide receiver Makai Lemon out of USC. I mean, I think we both were of the belief that the Eagles were going to go offensive line early, especially in the first round. But when, Proctor and Miller and Ione all went early, like in the first 17-ish, 16, 17 picks. The Eagles didn't want to sit back and kind of wait, take Max Iachinor. They didn't want to reach for somebody. And they got somebody who a lot of, analysts, a lot of draft experts put up there as top 2, top 3 receivers in all of the draft. They didn't wait. They got ahead of Pittsburgh, who was on the phone with them, which I don't know if I've ever seen that. Obviously, we haven't seen video of everything, but the video came out. He was on the phone with Pittsburgh, and then he was on the phone with the GM, Khan, the GM for Pittsburgh, and was like, "Why is Philly calling me?" And then his agent runs over and goes, "Yeah, they just traded up for you." So that had to have been weird, or that had to have been kind of a kick in the nuts, for lack of a better term, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Eagles jumped up, got their man, a receiver who sits at sorry, I thought I had this already set up. Kai Lemon is a slot receiver, I guess we'll call him. He did a lot of his damage at USC in the slot over the middle. He won the Biletnikoff last year as the nation's top receiver. So the Eagles didn't waste time, went up, got their man. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, especially just the note about the Steelers to be the host city and to have that happen to you just must have been so.
The Eagles have done that twice, by the way. They did it to Dallas in Dallas when they got Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, it just goes to show how well Howie reads the board, reads the room, reads, I don't even know what you want to call it, but like that ability to predict that and to know this is our guy and know that he's clearly somebody else's guy at the same time is just wild to me. And I agree with you. While I wish it was offensive tackle, I mean, you see that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are kind of getting raked over the coals from a grade perspective for drafting Ihenicher with the next pick and saying, that's a major developmental project. And there's quite a bit of work to be done there. So it's difficult to say, if he would have been the right choice for the Eagles if they had stayed pat. But it was clear the offensive line. It was widely reported heading into the draft that the offensive line there was going to be a run. When it was going to happen, kind of felt like it was going to be that, 12 through 20 area. And it really started to run there when some trades were made and some picks were made. So, I mean, initial reaction was kind of on the Makai Lemon pick was uninspiring. I was just kind of like, really wide receiver. I also thought in the back of my mind, now Howie Roseman cannot go to the podium and continue to say the same statement about AJ Brown over and over again that AJ Brown's an Eagle, because if you wanted to keep that as your moniker for the rest of the offseason, you probably shouldn't have went wide receiver in the first round. But so be it. But I mean, you see the highlight packages, you watch the film. He's gonna fit the mold of what the direction of the Sean Mannion offense is going to go. And I mean, we haven't really had a great slot receiver. You could say AJ Brown would be that guy, but they didn't use AJ Brown enough in the slot and let him do his work after the catch.
It is a different offense though. Like now I'm going to say this: if AJ were to stay, like they're three different receivers. Like people are saying the Eagles drafted Lemon to replace AJ Brown. You're not replacing AJ Brown with Makai Lemon. Makai Lemon's 5'11", 192. AJ Brown is what? He's 220, 230, 6'1", 6'2", or whatever. Like they are two totally different receivers. Like, and you mentioned how he can't keep. He did end up going up there and say, AJ is an Eagle.
He did.
And until it happens, he is technically an Eagle. I know he didn't show up to voluntary OTAs last week. Nothing's mandatory until I think January or June, like 10th or something, which is after the presumed date. But like, I'm still like, if Howie doesn't get what he wants now, and Adam Schefter said they might get a first rounder in 2028. Whatever. I still would keep AJ Brown. Like, imagine like the Eagles have 11 receivers on the roster, but the only locks are Devontae Smith, Makai Lemon right now, and Dontavian Wicks. Those three are the only locks. Like, if the Eagles in theory have enough cap that they could keep AJ Brown if they wanted to. And look, I get it. He's going to get traded. It's unfortunate. I think it's a dumb decision. It's stupid. But the Eagles are going to do what they're going to do and think that they're right. And who are we to kind of judge Howie, who's kind of on a heater right now? But if you were to have keep AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Makai Lemon, they're three different receivers. AJ Brown's the big power guy. He give him a slant, he can break tackles. I don't think Lemon's breaking tackles. Devontae Smith, send him down the field. He'll out jump most people for a lot of corners for the football. So like, I think that the three of them could fit into this offense. The one thing that we're seeing about the offense, because if we move to the second round pick in Eli Stowers, the tight end, they got the future tight end. Like, they are going to prioritize the middle of the field. Something that they didn't before, whether that's because the coaches didn't, game plan or scheme plays in the middle of the field, whether that's Jalen not really wanting to do that, they are going to use the middle of the field. They're going to use every inch, every blade of grass on that 52 and a third yard width of the field. They're going to use it all. So that's the one thing that you kind of got in this draft with the pass catchers they got. You're going to have the outside receivers. You're going to have the middle of the field. Everybody is going to get an opportunity to catch the football and make some and make some plays.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about the Eli Stowers pick, and then we obviously have to mention Dallas Goedert still on the roster, Saquon Barkley still on the roster. There's a lot of mouths to feed that are going to do a lot of different things and can work a lot of different sections of this field and do some great things for Jalen Hurts. Whether AJ Brown is there or not, the weaponry is definitely there. And I've seen, some people kind of, with regards to Makai Lemon and AJ Brown and stuff, I've seen people kind of adjust the whole replacement aspect. The rash, overreactive people are saying it's a 1-for-1 replacement, but the more logical people are taking the time to say, AJ Brown averaged, I think it was 4 receptions for 80 yards last season. And if you put together Makai Lemon, Eli Stowers, who's obviously going to be used across the field, at least he's not going to be exclusively a tight end. I know there's a lot of teams that viewed him as potentially a big wide receiver and stuff, which means that there's going to be quite a bit of versatility to where he's used on the field and within Sean Mannion's scheme. But I mean, if you take Stowers, you take Lemon, you take Hollywood Brown, who's a very unique burner wide receiver, different than AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dontavian Wicks and Makai Lemon. And then you put Dontavian Wicks into the mix. You got 4 guys who can easily make up for what you're likely losing in AJ Brown from a production standpoint. It's just more mouths to feed and feeding those mouths at the opportune times and gaining those and getting those yards that we may sorely miss by not having AJ Brown on the roster. I'm not saying AJ Brown can't be on the roster and AJ Brown can't be a fit within this, but it's pretty crowded. And if one of his biggest frustrations is I wasn't getting the ball enough, I feel like things are just going to get a lot harder for him to get the ball with Makai Lemon in the picture and Eli Stowers in the picture. And I agree with you. Who are we to judge Howie Roseman? Because he seems to, when he makes you question what he's doing, a year later we sit there and say, why were we questioning that? And I think at this point in the AJ Brown saga, it's about cash over cap. It's about opening up that cash for contracts that are going to have to be negotiated down the line with guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Jalen Carter, potentially Nolan Smith, Cooper DeJean, among other guys who are going to need Jalen Hurts. Even if he has a really good season, you have to expect that the door opens on conversations about an extension for him as well. So it's really, and it's about, is this a time that you can maximize AJ Brown's value? Because if you hold on to him, get halfway through the season, the antics continue. Is he worth a first rounder anymore? Or is this as opportune of a time as it's going to be? So there's a lot of things that Howie Roseman's obviously weighing with regards to the AJ Brown situation, but drafting Makai Lemon certainly didn't quiet the thoughts of it. And it certainly doesn't set them up to really keep AJ Brown around. And then Eli Stowers, moving on to the Stowers pick. I mean, I had him in every mock draft. I think he was the only pick that one of us actually got right in our Eagles only mock drafts. And I've had Eli Stowers there every time. I haven't been able to pass over him in any mock draft that I did for the Eagles because it just made too much sense. Dallas Goedert's probably not going to be back next year. We already know there's maybe 2 tight ends under contract beyond this year, and that's Eli Stowers and somebody else maybe. Yeah, we say 0, but I don't know about some of the practice squad guys. I don't know about Latu and stuff. But yeah, I guess those guys probably aren't making the roster based on some of the moves now. But Stowers is an athletic freak. We know he blew the combine out of the water. He won the award for top tight end in the nation, which was an award that if you look over the past, 5 or 6 years, all those guys who've won that award have gone on to have great success so far in their NFL careers. And you have to kind of think and assume that maybe Stowers is going to be headed in that direction as well. And his versatility within the scheme makes him such a unique weapon amongst an offense that already has a number of unique weapons, but I think it makes him even more unique than some of the other guys. Like you said, Makai Lemon, he's great after the catch, not going to beat press coverage, not going to be somebody you put outside. Devontae Smith is someone who can make people miss, but is a far better guy down the field, doing the 50-50 ball, doing that over-the-shoulder catch work that he does with Jalen Hurts. Hollywood Brown is a burner. They all have such unique skill sets beyond Stowers, who is someone who is not as unique. He's really somebody who can work all different parts of the field. I said it when we did our Eagles only mock draft. His ceiling as far as blocking goes is going to be extremely limited. That's not to say that he can't improve and become somebody that can be out there, but I do think that you're going to have a tight end in the building who specializes in blocking or is a more complete tight end from the outset. Because I think with Stowers' size is going to be a factor. And I know I was listening to a podcast earlier today that they said, well, Goddard came out and wasn't supposed to be a really great block in tight end, but Goddard had more size coming out than Stowers. And I don't know if Stowers is someone you add 20 pounds to, does he keep the athleticism and the effectiveness and the reason that you kind of brought him into the building? But I love the Stowers pick. The Makai Lemon pick I liked as well, but like I would probably give the Stowers pick in the A range, while the Makai Lemon pick more of like a B plus range.
And it's kind of, and I wasn't the biggest Jordan Matthews fan, but like having Jordan Matthews being drafted here, I think he was also a second round pick. And having coached at Vanderbilt, for the year, for a year last year, and being around Stowers, and Stowers, like he made a call to him after he got drafted, and just, Matthews or Jordan Matthews kind of just telling him about Philly and pretty much how he's going to love it here. And it's crazy, like every former athlete, that has played here, they go elsewhere, and it's kind of like the grass isn't always greener. Like, how rabid this fan base is, how dedicated this fan base is, how passionate this fan base is. And it's not like that everywhere. And if you go out there and you play hard and you make plays, you're going to hear it. You're going to feel it. Just with the Flyers game yesterday, just how like the Flyers got outplayed in close to 80 minutes of play, got outplayed probably for 60 minutes. And just because they still played hard, as soon as, York scored that game-winning goal, the roof blew off the place. So, like, again, if you just show up, you work hard, you go out there, do your job and whatnot, like you're going to feel the passion of the Eagles fan base. And Jordan Matthews, kind of knows that. He had that game-winning touchdown against Dallas when Sam Bradford was the quarterback. I think when Chip Kelly was here. So like he knows just what you need to do. If you put in the work, then you're going to be celebrated here, and he can kind of instill that in the Stowers. Going to the third round pick, the Eagles took the tackle out of the University of Miami, Markel Bell. This is a big dude, 6'9", 346 pounds. He played left tackle at Miami. He believes that he can make the move over to right tackle, and it's going to help that he's not going to have to go out there and, start right away. He can learn behind Mailata, learn behind Lane Johnson, and potentially become the tackle of the future. In 558 pass block snaps last year, he did not give up one sack. So, I mean, Eagles, what's the one thing Chip Kelly said? Big people beat up little people. If he, and like, he's the type of guy, if he gets his hands on you, you won't go anywhere. My issue with him is, like, because of his size, it might be easy for defenders to get up under him and kind of go inside. So that's going to be intriguing to see, like, in camp and in preseason games. But that's definitely an intriguing pick by the Eagles, taking Markel Bell.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've reached a point now where the Eagles have a ton of developmental talent, a ton of potential guys that could kick out to the right tackle position and take over for Lane Johnson. I'm interested to see where things start to go with the likes of Miles Hinton, Cam Williams, and now Markel Bell added to the mix. I mean, one can probably assume there's a chance to maybe test these guys out inside as well. I mean, we saw what they were able to do with Mekhi Becton, who was a massive human being as well, and moving him into right guard and taking advantage of that. Maybe there's an opportunity, because to me, Tyler Steen's not back after this season at this point in time. So there's no reason to believe that you should just give the job to Tyler Steen at right guard. I think there should be a wide open competition. And what better way to prepare yourself to take over the right tackle position and potentially become the heir than to play beside Lane Johnson and learn from him there and take reps during the preseason out at the tackle position, work a bit inside, maybe get that right guard job. I agree with you. The high center of gravity is a challenge. If he gets his hands on someone, you're probably not getting very far, and you're probably getting nowhere close to the quarterback. But if you get like a really bendy, twitchy edge that goes after you, there's a chance that high center of gravity becomes an enemy, just as much as the size is such a a reason why the Eagles were so interested and why teams were so interested in him as a prospect in general. Like you said, the traits are there. It's traits, traits, and traits with this guy. And for for what he for some of the stuff that the scouts say about him that are weaknesses, you put the stat out there. I think it goes beyond that. I think he has almost 1,000 snaps, or something along those lines, where he hasn't given up a sack. So he's unique. He's special. He's your typical Eagles pick. And now it's time to see. You didn't want to go out and outright trade up and get the true heir to Lane Johnson. It's time to see what there is in guys like Hinton and Pierce and Williams and Bell, and who can be the guy that you can kick out. There's enough guys there. You're not going to be able to keep them all. So you got to start to get an idea throughout this offseason, through the preseason, who could be that guy, because you don't want to go into the next season and be like, well, we don't think we have the guy, and have to potentially look at right tackle again in the next draft when you've had so many opportunities to do it early, leading into the past, 2 or 3 drafts, where the idea has been there that Lane Johnson is eventually going to retire. So it'll be interesting to see, but I like the pick. I mean, it was a typical Howie Roseman pick. And now there's going to be lots of competition at both left tackle, right tackle, swing tackle, potential options to move inside as well, which makes sense because when you look at the depth chart, while we've usually prided ourselves on offensive line depth, the depth isn't necessarily great from a versatility standpoint. You have your guy like Drew Kendall, who's your clear-cut backup center to Cam Jurgens if Jurgens is going to continue to play at center. But that's kind of what you get. You get these guys who are stalwarts at their position, but aren't really versatile and aren't really necessarily able to move around. And new scheme. How does Sean Mannion and his staff see some of these guys fit in? Especially, Bell is going to be in the mix easy. Micah Morris is going to be in the mix easy because they were drafted by, Howie Roseman, and with obviously Sean Mannion likely in his ear.
I was going to mention, we thought that with Stoutland not being here anymore and Chris Cooper being the new offensive line coach and Mannion running a different type of offense, that the Eagles may change up the type of offensive lineman that they bring in. But Bell is kind of the offensive lineman that they always bring in. He's big. He's it's been talked about, he's light on his feet. So we'll see how athletic he is, if he can get out into open space, if they were to pull him. So that's going to be very intriguing. The one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about Makai Lemon, when they made that trade up with Dallas drafted Malachi Lawrence at 23. They went defensive line. Remember the last time that the Eagles traded up with Dallas, they went up and got Devontae Smith, and Dallas drafted Micah Parsons. Now, I'm not saying Micah Parsons I'm not saying Lawrence is going to be Micah Parsons, but it's going to be interesting to see how their careers intertwine. We talk about Smith and Parsons while they play different positions. Being though that they were traded for each other. It'll be interesting to see how, when you compare Lemon to Lawrence and watch their careers, how they unfold.
I've never seen such bitter rivals be able to do such beneficial for both parties business on I know it's only 2 drafts, but that's already more than you see from most rivals. Usually if it's like the Steelers and the Ravens, they're probably not making that move. They're saying F you, but somehow Howie and Jerry or Steven, whoever's making the ultimate decision over there, they're always able to do business.
When they traded they drafted Kevin Cobb, they made a trade with Dallas. Dallas traded up with the Eagles to draft a defensive lineman. I don't remember who it was, but they have history, the Eagles and the Cowboys, of making trades. And we'll say I had Malachi Lawrence as an Eagles pick in my mock draft in the 2nd round. So I think it may have been a tad bit of a reach for Dallas, but this was a Christian Parker draft for Dallas. They went in, they got my favorite player, who I'm so pissed off that he went to Dallas, and Caleb Downs. So now I got to hate him. So that's going to suck hating him. But this was definitely a Christian Parker draft for Dallas, but keeping it to the Eagles. The Eagles, as part of that trade, they traded both of their 4th round picks to Dallas, so they didn't have a 4th round pick. And then in the 5th round, we got the quarterback, Cole Payton from North Dakota State. The second time the Eagles have taken a quarterback from North Dakota State. Obviously, 10 years ago, they took Carson Wentz. He was a 5-year player for North Dakota State. In his final season, he threw for 2,719 yards and 16 touchdowns. He added 777 yards on the ground and 13 touchdowns. He's 6'2", 232. He's a lefty, so that's going to be different. We haven't had a lefty since Michael Vick. I feel like that Cole Payton could be used if they decide this, because he did a lot of this at North Dakota State. He could be like the Taysom Hill. Now, I don't think he's as big as Taysom Hill, but he kind of has the qualities where he can run the football. He can throw the football, obviously. He said, I mean, he played on special teams in North Dakota State, played some tight end, played some H-back. So it wouldn't shock me if it may not be this year, obviously, but if depending on what happens at the quarterback position with Jalen Hurts, he could potentially kind of be used as a Swiss Army knife, get him on the field and maybe use him as some trick plays. But in that Taysom Hill role.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see now how they manage their quarterback room. Is Tanner McKee is there still a market for Tanner McKee? Could Tanner McKee be dealt? Obviously, we know that the Carolina Panthers ate about half of the salary for Andy Dalton, which makes Andy Dalton much easier to drop if Peyton has a really good offseason. They don't find a trade partner for Tanner McKee, and they end up going the route of keeping McKee and Peyton. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that room. I don't know. Based on where quarterbacks went, if you expose Cole Payton to waivers, there's a chance he makes it through and comes back on your practice squad, but only time will tell with what they see in him and how he works through this offseason. It's funny to watch them go back to such a different, North Dakota State is not somewheres where people go back to that often. So it really is interesting to think 10 years later, here we go again. They're going back to the North Dakota State and taking a quarterback after Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz and Cole Payton they had similar attributes, but they're fairly different quarterbacks in the grand scheme of things. And I think Payton brings some intriguing attributes to this Eagles room. And he said today in his presser that he met Andy Dalton at the building and got text messages almost immediately from Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee. So obviously everybody's welcoming and ready to go and have that competition. It was inevitable that they were going to draft a QB or at least sign one as a UDFA, but based on the UDFAs, the only real UDFA or option was Diego Pavia. So this was a better option to go into the draft, grab a guy, and have your 4 guys. I think I had posted on Twitter the last time that they didn't have 4 quarterbacks because it was becoming this big rolling down the hill snowball of, they're bringing in a quarterback early. That's a threat to Jalen Hurts. The last time they went into training camp with less than 4 quarterbacks, I think was 6 years ago. So it's rare that they don't go into the offseason program without 4 quarterbacks in place. And that's just logical now that you get to essentially keep 3 quarterbacks with the emergency 3rd quarterback in the mix. So I like the pick. Taylor Green, I think, went soon after that, which is one of the guys that you had on your board. I think Taylor Green was a really good pick for the Cleveland Browns, a really intriguing project pick for the Browns, who had one of the better drafts. But sticking back to the Philadelphia Eagles at hand, I think it was a good move. I think it was the right move, and they were going to draft a quarterback, and Peyton made sense. I really thought they were going to end up with Taylor Green. But clearly they saw more in Peyton that they might be able to get out of him.
We know Fernando Mendoza went number 1 overall. Are you surprised that Ty Simpson went 13 to the Rams? The Rams are a team that's kind of they're in play to win a championship now. They're one of the favorites, and they drafted for the future. They didn't draft for now. They drafted for the future. So were you surprised at that pick?
I was surprised at that pick. Now that things are coming out about the secret meetings and stuff, and I still don't buy that Sean McVay's totally on board with the pick and that he loved the pick despite what he's saying in front of the media and stuff. But Yeah, I was really surprised. I think that to me was one of the more surprising picks of the first round. There was a couple more, like Caleb Banks was pretty surprising when he went in the first round, but there was kind of like murmurs that he could go there because there was a thought from some that he was the best interior defensive line prospect in this draft. So it's yeah that I mean, for if I was a Rams fan, I would be so upset with that pick because for at least the next 2 years, he's just going to sit, maybe even 3 years, he's just going to sit behind Matthew Stafford, and then you lose the majority of that rookie contract, even though you have the fifth-year option. The fifth-year option for a quarterback, by the time you get down that far, is going to be so expensive for a guy who will have barely played much NFL football. So I don't know. I think win now, move and mode. I guess they didn't see Makai Lemon as the pick or the guy, even though they did extensive work on him prior to the draft. I guess there's some reports that came out that they really felt that they felt some great conviction about Simpson, even over weapons that could help them win now.
And then quickly, Carson Beck was the third quarterback, and Garrett Nussmeier didn't go till late to the Chiefs, which was a surprise. Everybody thought he would have went earlier. I think Nussmeier to the Chiefs is actually a good spot for him to be able to learn behind Mahomes and learn under Andy Reid.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had Carson Beck, I think, in our Eagles only mock draft going with that pick 98 at the end of the third round. And you said, ooh, that feels early. And I think he went even before pick 9 or just after pick 98 in the draft.
Is Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, clearly, and I mean, the Arizona's bungled that quarterback situation beyond belief. So, I mean, there's a chance Carson Beck could be the starter there, and that would be such a intriguing situation to watch in Arizona. But it just went to show you, like, it feels like every team had a very specific, very unique draft board. And I know that sounds obvious, but like, look at the Borkircher pick by the Jags to kick off the second round. Like, there was some really weird moves.
And then I neglected to say, with the Eagles did come in with 2 third-round picks. They traded one this year, one next year for Jonathan Grenard. They got their edge rusher, and they gave him a 4-year, $100 million contract, which is really a 2-year, $50 million contract. I mean, way less guaranteed money than Jalen Phillips got. $5 million less a year than Jalen Phillips got. I think Grenard playing next to Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter in this Fangio defense, if he can stay healthy. Like, he only had 3 sacks last year after having back-to-back years with 12. But he gets to the quarterback. He just hasn't been able to bring him down. I mean, just being able to get to the quarterback is going to be a positive. So him starting on one side, Jalix Hunt starting on the other side with Jomo, Davis, and Carter, and along the defensive line. My big question is, what does that say about Nolan Smith? Do they still have faith in Nolan Smith? Is Nolan Smith kind of on the outs because they gave money to Grenard and they're going to want to give money to Jalix Hunt?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of talk about Nolan Smith and could he be a potential trade bait now if they don't think that if they're not open and willing to give the contract, because we know, despite the production woes and the injury woes that have come with Nolan Smith, the edge market has just ballooned so much that some team is going to pay Nolan Smith. Some team is going to be willing to do it. And it's just a matter of, are the Philadelphia Eagles going to be the ones to do it? Or are they going to draft an edge, in next year or the year after and give the money to Jalix Hunt? It just doesn't feel realistic, or it doesn't feel like the Eagles have the confidence in Hunt and Smith to give contracts to both of them to be like their edges of the future. But we saw how much of an impact Jalen Phillips. I think Jalen Phillips only had 3 sacks last year, or 4 sacks last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. But we saw the impact that he had on the production for Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith. He turned them into completely different players. To your point, just because you can't get the quarterback down doesn't mean you're not having an impact on other players across the defensive line and them getting the quarterback down. And we saw that with Jalen Phillips. And I always knew, I think it was my hot but not so hot take when you asked me about it on our when we did our first round mock draft, and we were talking about one big thing that we were gonna take away from the Eagles in the draft that night, and I said that edge was going to be addressed by a trade for a veteran, and I said Jonathan Grenard. You went the next level, and we're saying Max Crosby. Big dreams there,
Miles
but
Garrett.
and Miles Garrett, yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, we like you said, you pay 30 million, yes, less guaranteed. If you look at the cap hits, Grenard never exceeds 20 point something million, whereas this year Jalen Phillips is 9 point something, and after that he's over 32 million on a cap hit every single year. And obviously that goes to the willingness of Jeffrey Lurie to kick the can down the road and stuff like that, and the cash situation and how the cap is handled by Howie Roseman more than what the Carolina Panthers want to do and how they want to manage it. You get the out in his age 30 seat at the end of his age 30 or right before he turns 30, and the Carolina Panthers have to wait 3 years, and Jalen Phillips will be 29. The injury risk, you get the more productive edge rusher historically. It just made so much sense at the end of the day, financially, the player you were getting, the guaranteed, that everything just made so much sense. And for
And
what you gave up, like at the end of the day, you get a third round compensatory pick next year from the Jalen Phillips move. So really, you gave up a bit of an earlier pick, but you're getting a compensatory pick back. Some people think that 2/3 was a lot to give up to then go and pay Grenard, but I think we saw the impact that Phillips had and a veteran edge presence has on this edge room, and I think it was important to get one.
And the Eagles are giving a lot of money to that defensive line, 25 million a year to Grenard, 27, I think, to Davis. And we know Jalen Carter probably, after a certain trade potentially goes down, is going to get his contract too. So they're going to be given, again, the money's shifting from the offense to the defensive side of the football, and it's starting with the defensive line. Going to the 5th round, the Eagles selected guard Micah Morris out of Georgia. You briefly spoke on him. He's 6'5", 334. Did not give up a sack last year, and he started 14 games. Another Georgia Bulldog, another guy that can potentially, slide in and play at the at that guard position. And he got to face, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter in practice at Georgia, and we know how Kirby Smart, designs those practices. It's best on best. They're not playing any games, so he definitely got baptism by fire, and he'll do it again his rookie year in the NFL going up against those guys. But if he can show that he can play and not give up any sacks and pressures like he did at Georgia, there's a good shot he might get a chance to play at guard, especially with the injury risks at left guard with Landon Dickerson, and who knows what's gonna and if Tyler Steen can improve his game.
Yeah, I mean a lot of the what people say about Micah Morris, there's like the prospect that people are surprised that he fell, and of course he landed with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then there's a lot of people who call out the inconsistent play, and someone just has to keep him focused and locked in and dialed in. And Philadelphia, with some of his Georgia Bulldog guys, was probably one of the most optimal landing spots that you could get. He's got the size, he's got intriguing athleticism, he's got some good power to him. Traits that, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles love. He played a bit at right guard, predominantly played at left guard. We know Landon Dickerson restructured his contract in a way that really feels like that after next year he's likely done. So 2 more years left, unless he gets really healthy and his body feels really good, which, based on the injury history with Landon Dickerson and what he's been saying about his injuries, it really feels like the restructure was done with the wink to Howie Roseman, like, prepare yourself because I'm going to be done. Micah Morris feels like a guy who could replace there, could move over to right guard if they want to give him a shot at right guard and have that open competition at right guard. But it was a good pick. I like the pick. There's some obviously some tendencies to worry about with him, but I think that he landed in the right spot. He's not going to Cleveland or somewheres where he might be able to get away with some of some of his antics and inconsistency in his behavior. But I think he landed in the right spot, and he's going to have a golden opportunity if he can prove that he can become more consistent and can be that guy they can trust at left guard.
Yep. So they're dipping into that Georgia well, and then the Eagles had 3 7th-round picks. First one at pick 244 was safety Cole Wisniewski from Texas Tech. He actually started his career at North Dakota State and was on the team with Cole Payton, so they know each other coming to Philly. He's 6'3", 219. Obviously, we know that the Eagles safety room is not crowded. Andrew Makuba, Marcus Epps, Andre Sam, J.T. Gray, and Michael Carter. We know that we assume that Makuba is one of the starters, and it'll be Epps or Carter probably with who they have right now. I'm still of the belief though that the Eagles are going to make a trade for a safety. Obviously, you just want to see how things play out, in camp and preseason. But it wouldn't surprise me if one of the Eagles starting safeties is not on the roster right now. But Wisniewski, I mean, he's going to help the team on special teams. He's more of probably more of an in the box type safety. So it'll be interesting to see if he does get on the field and if he can learn the offense, the Fangio's defense quickly. But I think that's an intriguing prospect.
Yeah, I mean, if you look into a lot of the scouting reports and see some of the film, he's much better playing towards the line of scrimmage. He's a more sound tackler, which is surprising. We normally like, Sidney Brown, Reed Blankenship, heat-seeking missiles with no real form with their tackle, form or reason with their tackle. So Wisniewski's different. He's interesting. He's someone you can bring to the line of scrimmage, and he can do some damage in like clear run situations. He's an intelligent player. Howie Roseman spoke very highly of him, even mentioned him in the same sense as Reed Blankenship, and kind of saying, look what we did with Reed. I think we can do, a similar with Wisniewski, and we can fit him into the defense and stuff. So Wisniewski was it was an opportune pick for them. They clearly needed to get a safety. He was clearly the higher safety on their board in the 7th round. And like you said, he's got some great eligibility as a kick and punt and coverage teams. So he may be able to carve out a role that keeps him on the roster right away from day one, especially with that wide open safety room. Like you said, beyond Makuba, Carter, and Epps, it's pretty wide open, and you're not just going to roll. You would assume unlikely to roll with just 3 safeties.
Yeah, they definitely will. They're going to add some. And again, I still think that the other starting safety is not on the roster just yet. With their second of 3 7th-round picks, the Eagles took the most intriguing guy in the draft from the International Player Pathway Program, defensive tackle Uar Bernard. And this guy, his size, he's 6'4", 306, has 6% body fat. He ran a 4.6 340, had a 39-inch vertical jump. He has all the measurables, obviously, but he's never played football. It's like Jordan Mailata, but on the defensive side of the ball. The Eagles can mold this guy into what they want him to be. And I think that, they were able to do that with Jordan Mailata. And you saw in the videos that the Eagles put out, Clint Hurt was super excited. You could see how giddy he was that the Eagles took him. So I'm going to be intrigued how he looks out there on the field, putting him in pads, putting him in a helmet, putting him up against the other offensive linemen. He's never done it before. It'll be intriguing to see how it is. And when the NFL put out videos when he got drafted, you just saw how emotional he was. He just, when you're in that position, you don't ever think you're going to have this opportunity. And that was so cool for him. He got down on his knees. He was so happy when he talked to Howie. He was talking about now Howie may have made it seem like he said that he's going to have to walk there, but I think he may have said he's got to work hard or hard work, something like that. I think he said work hard, not walk there, but to each their own. But yes, Bernard's definitely the most intriguing prospect that the Eagles drafted this year.
Yeah, and I mean, you get the roster exemption, so he doesn't really count against your 53-man roster, so you can keep him. It's like having an extra practice squad spot. You can mold him and not let him get into the grasp of anybody else. We also took as a UDFA the other guy who was in the IPP program, Joshua Wuru, as an edge. So I think they're really going to see who they can get the most out of, and obviously that's going to be the guy that they keep with that exemption pick. But I agree with you. That felt like a Clint Hurt pick through and through. I think Hurt was at the workout, did the workout with Bernard, and the emotion that the two, like, just the difference between how Bernard was speaking with Howie and Nick Sirianni, and then as soon as he got on the phone with Clint Hurt, it felt like a completely different person. You can tell Clint Hurt is obviously very passionate and knows that he can work with this guy, and that's why I have all the confidence in. People say, well, why would you take him? You probably could have got him as a UDFA. The board was probably slim pickings at that point for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Clint Hurt's there. Clint Hurt, just saying, could be your future defensive coordinator. I know that the idea is out there that obviously it's likely Schwartz, but Hurt could be the guy too. You never know, and you hear him saying what he's saying, you hear him calling his graces, you take the shot and you say, here's your piece of clay, mold this man. And then Jonathan Grenard was on Chris Long's podcast and spoke so highly of Bernard and was just like in awe of the athleticism, the size, what's possible with him, and said the first move he's teaching him is a bull rush. And I think it's pretty clear to people it's a lot easier to learn the defensive line than it is to learn the offensive line. So to mold Bernard, it will be much easier than molding Jordan Mailata and doing what you had to do with Jordan Mailata. And I think Mailata is like a stretch. Mailata is that rare occasion. So there's a chance Bernard doesn't work out, but there's everything there. The great defensive line coach, the pure athleticism, the size, everything that you need to mold this guy and have him become the next IPP success story for the Eagles.
The NFL, I was watching the NFL Network coverage. They put up, and again, he's not this person. They put up like the measurables between him and Myles Garrett, and like that's what he's built like. Obviously he doesn't have the talent that Myles Garrett had, but who knows what he can kind of be groomed into. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be intrigued in watching his. And you were talking about how like it was slim pickings when you get to the 7th round, and I think in basketball as well, and like in college, like or in football, because of the NIL and all in the transfer portal and all this stuff, like not as many kids are coming out into these drafts, early, because you can make more money in 1 year in college than you can make as a 5th, 6th, 7th rounder in the NFL. So, the players that would originally or that would normally be out, taking a draft board from, like, there was talk that there weren't 32 first-round picks in this draft. There were like 15.
There wasn't even. I was going to say there wasn't even 16 for most draft boards.
Yeah, it was between 10 and 15. So like you're not getting the quality of talent that you would normally get before NIL. So it doesn't hurt to just go out there and kind of take a chance on somebody like Bernard. And with the final pick in the 2020 for the 2026 draft class, the Eagles took outside linebacker Krishawn James Newby from New Mexico. He started at Montana Tech, then went to Idaho and finished his career at New Mexico. He had 9 sacks last year, 10 and a half the year before. He started 46 games in his college career and had 23 and a half sacks. He can get after the quarterback. He's kind of small, 6'1", 240. But again, we're talking about a 7th round guy. So he has an opportunity to go out there and, when given the opportunity, try to make plays, get after the quarterback.
Yeah, in your comment, about Bernard and your comment about James Newby, I think that I shared something on our X feed earlier that people can go back and take a look at. It was how many guys drafted on day 3 since 2021 had played 10 plus games last season, had started 10 plus games last season, and it was 12%. So across a broad set of, I can't remember what the total number was, but you think about 32 times 4 times that by 5 seasons, like you're talking 650 plus prospects. I think the number was 83 had played 10, had started 10 or more games for an NFL team last season. Brock Purdy was, they noted, was an exception. He played 9. But I mean, if you even want to throw him into the mix, you're not going to get that number to go from 12% to much beyond or even close to 15%. So, all the reason to take your chance, take your shot, because you're likely looking at 1 in 10 of your day 3 picks, in theory, actually being an important key starter on your football team. So these are the guys where you take the athletic traits, you take the highly productive guys in college, and you see if they fit your team, if they're going to be able to find a spot on your team, win a spot on your team, or if they end up being a practice squad guy, because those practice squad guys can be invaluable as well, as you see with, you get the 2 call-ups, and how many times have the Eagles maxed out their call-ups on guys, and those guys been on the roster? Almost happens every single season. So there's an opportunity there, but the odds are so slim that these guys actually become productive starters, productive even depth players for you in their NFL career. So taking shots on a guy like Bernard or a guy like James Newby, somebody said, "Oh, this guy's giving me what was his name, Power Island vibes from last season."
Virginia Tech, yeah.
I think the difference to me there would be James Newby has way better athletic traits, way better athleticism than Power Island. Power Island was just purely a late round pick that had really nice production in college, and how he rolled the dice on the production. Now you get a guy who's got really good production numbers, not necessarily at the highest level of play, obviously amongst the Power 5 schools and stuff, but he's got really intriguing athleticism. And at this point, you got Grenard, you got Hunt, you got Smith. This guy's going to be what, your 4th up, your 5th up, if he's even able to make the roster, because there are a number of other edges that, Adebike that the Eagles brought in. And his name's slipping me, but we brought in another guy, another edge in the off season. So there's a chance that this guy, James Newby, just ends up on the practice squad, which is totally fine, because he's got the athletic traits and stuff that there's a possibility he could turn into something at the NFL level, even if just a rotational depth piece for the Eagles.
And then, as their undrafted free agents, the Eagles brought in about 8 players: Deontay Lawson from Alabama, Deontay Lawson, linebacker from Alabama, Daquan Wright, tight end from Ole Miss, Jaden Roberts, guard from Alabama, Kapina Gushinkin, cornerback from Ole Miss, Josh, as you mentioned, Joshua Waru from Kenya in the IPP program, Rocco Underwood, long snapper from Florida, Maximus Pooley, safety from Wolford, and Tucker Large, safety from Washington State. The guy that I'm most intrigued about, Deontay Lawson, he played with John Campbell last year or 2 years ago. So he has that familiarity. I always mess that word up. And he's somebody that's athletic, like really athletic, can go sideline to sideline, get after the football. So I'm intrigued by him. I think he has an outside shot of making the team. And then Wright, who I probably the guy that you may talk about at the tight end position. I thought the Eagles would potentially take 2 tight ends. They took Stowers, obviously, and maybe like a Triggs or a Roush, later in the draft to help rebuild this tight end room. We know that Goddard's going to be on the roster this year. Stowers is going to be on the roster, and probably Munt. Hopefully Calcaterra is not, but I think Wright has a chance, with his athletic ability. And again, he's not, the blocking type tight end, but he's athletic, go out there and catch the football. So it wouldn't shock me if he had an opportunity of making the roster.
Yeah, Wright intrigues me. Wright is definitely a better blocker than Stowers. I think he has a higher upside with regards to being, a more all-around tight end, someone you can keep on the roster. Like, I'd keep a guy with Wright's profile over Grant Calcaterra's profile, especially since you already know what you have in Grant Calcaterra. You can't even put him out there for blocking situations. You can on the flip side, put right out there and block in situations. He's a willing blocker. He's got a bit more of a ceiling there as a blocker, and he's intriguing from an athletic profile standpoint. And then, of course, Lawson to me, obviously the long snapper is likely going to make it because you need a long snapper, obviously, and we have none on roster. But Lawson's really intriguing as well. It's not often you get like a guy who people at the start of the process, like this is a guy who had day 2 draft grades from some people on him. So it's rare to see a guy from a school like Alabama with people giving him grades that are around 2, 3, 4, make it all the way out to be a UDFA. So Lawson's really intriguing, especially because there's nothing to say guys like Smail Mondin need to be on the roster or have sure thing roster spots despite what they brought to special teams, because whatever Mondin is bringing to special teams, I'm sure that they can see testings out with Lawson, and Lawson would have some capabilities on special teams as well. So those are really the two most intriguing. I agree with you. Waru's going to be interesting to see. I guess it's going to be between him and Bernard. One of them's going to make the roster because it's a roster exempt spot. It's just who's it going to be? I think it's a lot easier to mold Bernard and turn him into a usable interior defensive lineman, learning the edge position and the intricacies of the edge position and becoming an edge rusher, an effective edge rusher. Much more difficult than, teach Bernard a really good bull rush and have him close a pocket. And if he can do that a handful of times a game, he's already extremely valuable to the team. Teach him just some of those simple power moves, power speed moves, and he can become an effective option for this team. So we'll see what they do, but it is intriguing that they got both of those IPP guys and what they might do with them.
And it helps when they've had success when it comes to Jordan Mailata, and Mailata had conversations with Bernard, I'm pretty sure, before, and that probably helped. What is your grade? What grade do you give the Eagles for the draft?
I mean, and I think this is also a reflection of this just wasn't a good draft class. I'm giving it a B plus. I was close, like you could call it A minus, B plus, but I really think I'm holding there B plus. I think, I wish we could have addressed right tackle and gotten a more sure thing for the future. But that obviously wasn't happening the way the board fell. The drafting of a wide receiver clearly spells the end of AJ Brown, which me and you have been adamant we don't think getting rid of AJ Brown makes this team better, even though you brought Makai Lemon in. Makai Lemon does not fill that gap. Obviously, you can say 3 or 4 of these guys can fill the gap, but that's 3 guys you're keeping on roster to fill the gap with one guy who you can trust consistently to produce the way he was producing and doing his thing. Adams exploits is B for me with Grenard. I include that in it for me. Even with the Grenard deal, that's probably what makes it the plus for me versus the B that Adams exploits is given. It just wasn't an exciting draft. It wasn't, but it didn't have the high end talent or necessarily maybe that there was depth, but how is this depth for these gonna land on these rosters? Like no one gets excited about, oh, we got our 3rd tight end on the roster. It's a sure thing. That's not something that's exciting. So that's why I think for me, it's more of an indication of just the draft class versus like a more of an equal split of how he did and just a weakness of the draft class and stuff like that. And the Grenard move definitely helped as well. So B plus for me.
Yeah, I'm going to go B. Look, Makai Lemon might very well be a really, really good player. Again, I don't know if it was warranted moving up for a wide receiver. Again, he's not replacing AJ Brown. AJ Brown is a monster. AJ Brown is a Hall of Fame talent. Has Hall of Fame capabilities at the receiver position. It's going to be unfortunate if and when we trade him, because I definitely don't think it's a smart idea, but it's kind of all signs are pointing to that right now. So I'm definitely going to be disappointed when that happens. And we mentioned it earlier, Adam, that it's probably going to be a 1st round pick in 2028. And who knows how things are going to be. Like we don't even know. Like, we didn't jump into this, and I don't want to, but like, who knows if Vrabel's going to be the coach? He might not even be the coach this year. You never know, like, depending on how things go there. So it would be better to get the 2027 first round pick, because they're definitely going to be worse in 2027. They're not going to the Super Bowl. They don't have the cupcake schedule.
And that's all the more reason to get that 2027 pick, because then in 2028 they get the easier schedule and they have the opportunity to have a bit more of a cakewalk again, which means it's going to probably put it on the back end. Because I do think the Vrabel there or Vrabel not there, that the Patriots are headed in the right direction. I just think there's clear regression that's going to happen this year, just presumably because they go from having the number one easiest schedule to having one that probably ranks 20th or lower, and how they played during the playoffs and how Drake May played during the playoffs, despite it being some really good defenses that they had to go up against. You want that 2027.
His numbers were terrible too.
Yeah, his numbers were terrible.
So I'm going B. Again, they do have a lot of potential. Eli Stowers has a chance to be really, to be a future stud. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but we'll go B now. And obviously, we really can't grade this draft for like 4 years, before we know what we really have. But again, I said it earlier. Who are we to doubt Howie? It's tough to doubt Howie.
I know there's a lot of people, like, especially when I say that on X, they're just like, oh, you're just a Howie homer. Listen, we have a top 3 GM in the NFL. And
maybe the top GM in the NFL.
Maybe the top GM. I'm trying not to be too homerish here. So top 3 GM in the NFL. Ever since like the Jalen Reagor pick and some of those bad moves of many years back, they've stuck to more of a consensus big board. They've stuck to, more sure thing players, not taking those chances, and how he's making really good decisions, making smart decisions from the perspective of trades and the draft capital and playing the compensation and the financials and the way that he plays the financial system. Of course we're going to give him credit and we're going to be homers, because he is, no matter what, you can sit there and argue it all you want or be like, oh, you guys are just homers. You're not going to sit there and tell me he's not at the worst a top 5 GM in this league. There is no way that you're going to sit there and say, no, he's definitely a bottom half of the league GM. This is not happening.
Yeah, he's one of the better GM in all of sports, not just the NFL. We appreciate everybody tuning in to this week's edition of the Kelly Green Hour. The next time we see you, we are going to do our really way too early 53-man roster. Like, really early, because it's not even May yet. Well, it'll be May tomorrow. But,
we're just going to see rookie mini camp, and then we're just going to go bombs away.
And if anything comes out about during rookie mini camp, we'll definitely touch base on that as well. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRoyal54. And follow the eaglespinpull Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate everybody that tuned in. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour. We're going to have to get a new opening